Hello, welcome to today's session. Today we will be talking about the concept of economic activities and economic development. So let's first start with what is economic activity. So we will be dealing with the basic economic activities. So the first and the foremost basic economic activity we all know is the primary activities. So primary activities include all those activities which are directly born from the soil. So activities like farming, you have mining, forestry. So these are all primary activities. The next lot of activities are secondary activities, which utilizes the resources from primary activities. So we have the agricultural produce coming in. So we have manufacturing units, we have production units. For example, we have cotton that is coming from primary activities. That cotton is used to manufacture cotton textiles. So you have textiles, that is a kind of secondary activity. So that's the next version of activity. The next is tertiary activity. Tertiary activity includes all services and retails. So all the things that you are supplying into the market, the retail, the wholesale. So market behavior is basically governed by kind of tertiary activities. Next is quaternary activities. We call them primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. So quaternary basically includes professional services. So these include services like education, finance, then you have research, you have medical fields, you have lawyers, executives, engineers. So those are all kind of quaternary services which are professional in nature. Finally, you have the quinary services. Quinary services basically employ executive roles. So you have CEOs of the companies, you have government officials. So everything that goes into the government machinery or the machinery for management and lookout is known as quinary activities. So quinary and quaternary activities are the least discussed activities. Mostly when we discuss, we talk about these three primary activities. Now let's try to understand this by means of a interrelated web. So you have primary activities. For example, I have taken the example of wheat here. So you have wheat cultivation. So farmer in a plot of land is cultivating wheat. So that's a kind of primary activity. Okay. The next here is that wheat goes into the flour mill where flour is made out of wheat. So that's a manufacturing plant and it's a secondary unit. The flour units are packed and they are sold out into the retail market and the wholesale market. So that is a kind of tertiary activity or tertiary services sector that is flourishing up. Now, to provide these kind of retail and wholesale from the level of primary to tertiary, you need, so you have quaternary activity which relates to both, which relates to all of these. You have primary, then you have secondary, and finally tertiary. So these are the people who are involved in R&D, research and applications of technology to the field of agriculture. So these are basically providing way to the tertiary sector. Finally, you have the quinary sector, that's the government officials and the governments which would be allotting the set of land for agricultural use, which would be distinguishing agricultural land and commercial land. So you have the quinary set of services which is governed basically by the government or the top executives. Okay. So these are the kind of activities that exist in reality. So we discussed primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary and quinary activities. We understood how they are related to one another and impact from one is affecting the other service or the other activity in economics in reality. Now let's talk about what is economic development and how is it different from economic growth. Now I'll try to explain this with a very simple diagram here. So let's assume I have a farm, okay, and my farm is flourishing very well in, say, a fruit called kiwi or a star fruit, and that star fruit is native to my region or native to my state. So my state is very rich in star fruit, but I don't know whether the world around me is in need of that star fruit or is looking for such an exotic variety of fruit. Okay, so what I do is, till the time I don't know, I am unaware about the outside world, I keep on growing the stuff for my own state. It is supplying to my own country and the nearby areas. One day, a foreigner comes into my country. Okay, when he gets into the country, he discovers that exotic fruit and he wants that fruit to be taken to his own country. So this is country A, and then you have country B here. Now that foreigner will try to take that fruit to his own country. Okay. And there he'll discover that people out there like the fruit. So he'll try to ask the natives here to export. Okay. So people here would be exporting the star fruit to the country B. So what would happen is, here a lot of money inflow would be there, and money inflow would in turn affect the GDP of the country. Okay, so this is what is growth. So now that nation or that state would start growing because a state has discovered something and it's exporting and getting very good money back into the country. So this is what is known as economic growth. But when the foreigners come in here and they discover that this fruit is bringing good results in country B, what they will try to do? They will bring in investments, and that investments would come in various forms. They will try to develop the infrastructure. Okay, they will try to develop roads, transportation facilities. They try to improve the standard of living of people. Social well-being will take place. Okay, so these are all what would be increased in country A due to the impact of exports, and this is what is known as development. So here is how we understand the difference between growth and development. So growth basically means more output and more efficiency. On the other hand, when we talk about development, we say development definitely means more output, more efficiency in economic terms. So you have increased GDP, increased NDP. Okay, that is one factor that is included in development. So you have GDP increased along with technical upgradation, better institutional arrangements that would lead to higher allocation of resources and input in a particular direction. So now this country A knows that it has to develop the facilities for a star fruit or kiwi and increase the resources so that it not only exports to country B, but it also starts exporting its fruit to other countries like country C, D, and so on. Okay, so that's the way this country is growing into one direction. So you have a particular direction that this country is following for growth. This country discovered that we are doing very well by earning revenue from the sale of star fruits, which is a kind of exotic fruit and unique to our own country. And if we try to export it not only to country B but to other countries as well, we'll get more and more of investments, which will in turn increase the standard of living, and it would bring in more institutional arrangements in our country. So that is what is the basic difference between growth and development. Now let's understand the parameters or the factors that affect growth. So we have first of all understood the difference. Now here are the parameters that affect the development of a region. When I talk about growth, I can say only these economic factors would be there that would be affecting the growth of a country. So that's the per capita income, you have NDP, GDP, the economic sectors prospering up, the productivity and raw materials, and finally the consumer goods. So that would govern the growth. When I talk about development, all these parameters would be included for the development of the nation. Social measures, as I know that the country is growing well, so there is increased economic activities, which in turn is increasing the money flow or increasing the revenue generation in the nation. That would lead to increase in the standards of literacy and education. You'll have more accessibility to public services. The infrastructure quality will increase, and that would lead to higher social security. The next is demographic measures. Sorry, the demographic measures basically includes decreasing the mortality rate in children, controlling the natural increase in population, so that's birth rate minus death rate. Then you have epidemiological transition, so that's controlling the diseases. You are basically trying to control the birth rate. Okay, and finally you have a kind of increased life expectancy. So you are trying to increase the life expectancy of the people around. The other measures which would strengthen by means of economic development are the higher purchasing power and increased human development index. Then you have the structural transformations that would take place, that is the institutional changes that would take place in the region. So these institutional changes would definitely include the rate of transformation, how you are transforming from one economic activity to another economic activity. So moving from kind of primary activity to secondary activity is kind of one transformation. Then you have other kinds of transformation that would include the shift in productivity, the shift in raw material, shift in consumer goods. When we say that we are trying to improve the structure of the country or the structure of a region, what is important is social upliftment. So that would again include removal of superstitions, okay, increasing literacy, higher standards of living. So these are some of the parameters that directly or indirectly are governed by better economic development. So you have an increase in economic development that affects the economic measures, social measures, the demographic or the population, the people of the region, and the structure of the region. So here is how we differentiate the factors that affect growth and factors that affect development. Okay. Now we know that how we can enhance the growth of a region or promote more development in the region, but there are factors that hinder the growth and development. Now we must be very clear what are the factors that try to inhibit the growth of a region. For example, since I am exporting, let's move on to the same example, the export or kind of one of the exotic fruits. I'm trying to export that fruit, but when I'm trying to export that, I'm trying to produce, before I was producing it locally for my own region. So say I needed only 100 kilograms per month, okay? Now say that amount has increased to 100,000 kilograms, okay? So I need to check what are the factors that are limiting the growth. So these are the factors that limit the growth or development of the region. So factors that limit the growth and development of the region includes unfavorable climatic conditions. You do not have that much of land resources or land area. The environment is not favorable. So there is kind of unfavorable environment or unavailability of that much of land. Then there can be, because some people might be interested in export, other might try to hinder that. So there can be kind of political instability, or there can be colonialism. Colonialism exists in the basically kind of pre-industrial, I should say, setup. So when we are trying to, again, here it is important, when we were discussing economic activities, primary, secondary and tertiary, it's important to understand primary activities originated before industrialization. Secondary activities came up during industrialization, and tertiary activities were basically post-industrialization or came up. The service sector flourished only after the industrialization wave came in. Then you have kind of economic factors which has a vicious cycle. So here is the cycle. If I am earning, say, only 1,000 rupees a month or $1,000 a month, what would happen? My net income is low, so I am able to save, say, only $50 a month. Okay, that would lead to low investment. Since I am saying saving only $50, what I can invest in is a kind of simple mobile phone, not even a transport vehicle, not even a car, not even a house. Okay, so my investment is low. A low investment would lead to deficiency of capital in the market. So there would be lack of capital. Lack of capital would lead to poor infrastructure. Productivity would decrease, and that low productivity would again be the cause of low income. This low income would definitely lead to decrease in demand. So I would have a lower demand. And finally, that lower demand would again lead to less investments. So this is a kind of economic vicious cycle that exists in reality. Then you have the social and demographic factors that affect the growth or development of a region. So if there is poor quality or inappropriate population, the population that is not smart enough to use the resources or export the resources to right country, then the growth would be limited. If there is a kind of rapid demographic revolution, if the birth rate is increasing at a very higher pace, you have to feed that many people. So that would again inhibit the development of the region. So controlling population, discovering possibilities of migration. If my country is exporting very well, I do not need to move out to another country for the purpose of revenue generation. So I will have to discover the possibility of migration in that case. Then there are problems associated to land tenure. Say I am cultivating at land A and land B is of another owner. And since I want to expand my business, I want to merge these two land, and that person is not ready to give his land for purpose of export. So that's the problems with that happen usually with land tenures. You have social customs and taboos that are coming up. So kind of superstitions, taboos, and social rituals. These all inhibit the development of any region. Then you have the scientific and the technological factors that affect the region. So the scientific and technological factors includes measurement methodologies, reliability of statistics, and the structural and the functional changes that are taking place over the time. So you have increase in national output. So your aim is to increase the national output, but since the national output is being curbed, there needs to be some functional and structural change that is growth and development of the region. So these are the factors that technically inhibit or limit the growth of a region. Now let's understand some of the parameters that are related to development. So when we talk about development, you have few major parameters that are included. First is the Human Development Index. Okay, this Human Development Index governs the literacy rate, is affected by three parameters, that's the life expectancy, education, and GDP. Then you have the Human Poverty Index. So you have two kinds of Human Poverty Index, 1 and 2. So 1 is basically for the developing countries and 2 is for the selected OECD countries. So here you have the probability at birth of not surviving up to the age of 40. Then you have the adult literacy rate and decrease in the standard of living. That's one of the factors that is considered. So these are all the factors that we are talking about under development. So when we talk about development, we need Human Development Index, we need Human Poverty Index. The next is Gender Related Development Index. We call it GDI. So Gender Related Development Index includes life expectancy, equal distribution of education among males and females, life expectancy again for males and females differently. And again you have the income distribution for males and females. So we are trying to access or assess how males and females are doing at par in the country. So if we say the difference in the male-female income, life expectancy and education level is minimum, that means the country is developing well. Okay. If we say the difference between them is higher, if the difference between males and females is higher, that means the country's development is not at par with the development it should be. The next is GEP, that is Gender Empowerment Measure. Gender Empowerment Measure includes male and female shares in parliamentary seats. Then you have the economic participation and decision making. And finally, you should have the power over economic resources. So again, the parameters remain the same. It's just a small variation here you have. So you have the shares in the parliament or political share. Then you have economic share and how you are using the economic resources. So these are the three fundamental measures that are part of gender empowerment. So if you say females are politically much more strong, that means you have female empowerment. You have economic, you are using that in economic terms or in participation or decision making. And finally, you have economic resources. And then you have the GDI, that is the Gender Development Index. You have the Human Development Index and the Human Poverty Index. That would so these four together govern the development of the region, and based on that we devise the development index, which governs how we rank the countries according to it, and we say which country is developing at a better pace than the remaining countries. So with this we complete what are economic activities, what is the difference between economic growth and development, and the factors affecting the development of the region and the factors that inhibit it. In the next session, we would be talking about the various world resources and the concept of energy crisis, how it is increasing with the increase in utilization of various resources. So stay tuned for the further lessons. Have a good day ahead.